The Neymark Singer story has taken us back in time to search for the challenges of tomorrow's generation. At the conclusion of our family story, we turn to the book Everything is Illuminated, where we learned that at the core of our identity, of who we are, at the core of how we present ourselves to the world, are found the traditions, religious rituals, and customs of our religion. We spend a lifetime building this identity, an identity that gives us a sense of well-being, an identity that we often wear as a badge of honor. Consider for a moment our family. Our ancestors were Polish, Russian, Ukrainian, Chinese, and Irish. We are Jewish, or we choose to live as part of the Jewish community. The spiritual histories of our family are Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, or Taoist, all of which forms the root core of who we are. So our challenge, how to live as a Jew in a world that is not overwhelmingly Jewish. Myra's uncle, Rabbi David Aronson of blessed memory, once spoke of the two European cities with castles, Prague and Krakow. In Prague there is a clock tower, unique as the Jewish people itself. Actually, there are two clocks on this tower, one with Roman numerals and another with Hebrew letters. The one with Roman numerals turns clockwise, while the Hebrew letter clock runs in just the opposite direction. Both keep the same time, but differently. This ancient tower with its two clocks speaks of the Jewish need to live in two worlds at the same time. Throughout Jewish history, the great achievements of Judaism, the prayer book, the Talmud, the books of Jewish mysticism, which spoke of our human obligation to repair the broken fragments of our world, I believe resulted from Jews freely mixing with the Greek, Muslim, and Christian cultures. So many of our folkways grew out of the non-Jewish cultures among whom we lived. Why, we wouldn't even have the Hanukkah dreidel or Hanukkah gelt or potato latkes if it weren't that these customs have their origins in the folk practices associated with Christmas Eve in medieval Germany. So it is that throughout the ages, our Jewish and non-Jewish worlds have been enriched one by the other. There is an old Yiddish proverb, you can't dance at two weddings at the same time. So how do we balance these two worlds into which we spend our life dancing? Throughout our life, we are confronted with the challenge of, while living in a non-Jewish world, how to keep our Jewish identity intact, not compromising our Jewish self, while at the same time being engaged in the world of the other. A difficult task in the best of times, made that much more challenging, if not impossible to keep, in times of deep-seated prejudice and outright hatred. As rich and beautiful as our heritage is, and as important as it is for us to preserve it, for most of us, we don't live in the isolated Polish villages of 100 years ago. Our village is a global village. We have to find a way of weaving our heritage and our Jewish identities into the larger fabric of the global village. In accepting this challenge, there are risks. If we insist on living only with other Jews, all in the name of self-preservation, we lose out on the richness of being part of the larger fabric and always being seen as the outsider, easily a target for prejudice, hate, and persecution. And the other risk is when we try to blend in and become like everyone else, making our Judaism appear almost invisible. That is when we end up losing our identity to the larger fabric of society and live out our days not knowing who we really are. Our challenge, your challenge. Find a way to weave the religious and secular together into one fabric and not lose the color or weave of our own thread. An image from the last night of our Routes to Roots Poland mission illustrates the opportunities that await. In lighting the Havdalah candle, we use the candlestick rescued by the Lefkowitz family of Rose and Sherry from the fires of the Holocaust. What makes the Havdalah candle unique is that it is not just one candle, but many candle strands woven together, which when lit produces a flame that is greater than the sum of its parts. So it can be with us when we combine the unique light of our Judaism with that of our Christian and Muslim neighbors. With the light we produce, there will be no force of darkness that can overcome us. When Myra and I were in Berlin, Germany, we paid a visit to the zoo. There my camera portrayed photographically our challenge. Taking pictures of the lions and tigers, I saw to my amazement the scene as the camera saw it. At first, there were the large cats, safely tucked away in their cage, they in their world and we in ours. Then as I moved the camera setting for a close-up, the bars that separated us began disappearing. In truth, they were still there, but in the camera's eyes, they were gone. What you are witnessing is not the result of trick photography or Photoshop, but what the camera actually saw. Therefore, for me, it becomes a paradigm for what can happen in personal relationships. To the generations of tomorrow, I offer this model. Identity strong and securely built, where we're not afraid to express our differences, the essence of who or what we are. But then as we come to know the others in our world and they us, what we would see would go beyond what separates, to focus upon what makes us brothers and sisters of one family and one God. I leave you with this story. A rabbi once asked his students how we can tell when night had ended and day had returned. His students responded, "Could it be when we see an animal in the distance and can tell whether it's a dog or a cat?" "No," answered the rabbi. "Well, could it be when we look at a tree in the distance and can tell whether it's an orange or a grapefruit tree?" "No." "Well then," the students asked, "when is it?" "It is," replied the rabbi, "when we look at the face of any man or woman and see that they are our brother or sister. Because if we cannot do that, then no matter what time it is still night. For too long we have endured in darkness. May our children, children's children, and we live to explore light's new dawning." The Kotzker Rebbe once said, "Intolerance lies at the core of evil, not the intolerance that results from any threat or danger, but intolerance of another who dares to exist, intolerance without cause. It is so deep within us because every human being secretly desires the entire universe to himself. Our only way out is to learn compassion without cause, to care for each other simply because the other exists. Now it is for you, the future generations, to write your legacy."
שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך. שים שלום